Chapter 37. Leroy Gets His Revenge. Carter. Maybe I'm a slow learner, okay? Because it wasn't until that moment, facing the god Set in the middle of his throne room, in the heart of an evil pyramid, with an army of demons outside and the world about to explode, that I thought, coming here was a really bad idea. Set rose from his throne. He was red-skinned and muscular, with fiery armor and a black iron staff. His head shifted from bestial to human. One moment he had the hungry stare and slavering jaw of my old friend Leroy, the monster from the DC airport. The next he had sandy hair and a handsome but harsh face, with intelligent eyes that sparkled with humor and a cruel, crooked smile. He kicked our uncle out of the way, and Amos groaned, which at least meant he was alive. I was clenching my sword so tight, the blade trembled. Zia was right, I said. You possessed Amos. Set spread his hands, trying to look modest. Well, you know, it wasn't a full possession. Gods can exist in many places at once. Horus would tell you if he was being honest. I'm sure Horus has been looking for a nice war monument to occupy or a military academy somewhere. Anything but that scrawny little form of yours. Most of my being has now transferred to this magnificent structure. He swept his arm proudly around the throne room, but a sliver of my soul was quite enough to control Amos Kane. He held out his pinky, and a wisp of red smoke snaked toward Amos, sinking into his clothes. Amos arched his back like he'd been hit by lightning. Stop it, I yelled. I ran toward Amos, but the red mist had already dissipated. Our uncle's body went slack. Set dropped his hands as if bored with the attack. Not much left, I'm afraid. Amos fought well. He was very entertaining, demanding much more of my energy than I had anticipated. That chaos magic, that was his idea. He tried his best to warn you, to make it obvious I was controlling him. The funny thing is, I forced him to use his own magic reserves to pull off those spells. He almost burned out his soul trying to send you those warning flares. Turn you into a storm? Please, who does that anymore? You're a beast, Sadie shouted. Set gasped in mock surprise. Me? Really? Then he roared with laughter as Sadie tried to drag Amos out of harm's way. Amos was in London that night, I said, hoping to keep his attention on me. He must have followed us to the British Museum, and you've been controlling him ever since. Desjardins was never your host. Oh, that commoner, please, Set sneered. We always prefer blood of the pharaohs, as I'm sure you've heard. But I did love fooling you. I thought the bonsoir was an especially nice touch. You knew my ba was there watching you. You forced Amos to sabotage his own house so your monsters could get in. You made him walk into an ambush. Why didn't you just have him kidnap us? Set spread his hands. As I said, Amos put up a good fight. There were certain things I could not make him do without destroying him completely, and I didn't want to ruin my new plaything quite so soon. Anger burned inside me. Amos's odd behavior finally made sense. Yes, he had been controlled by Set, but he'd been fighting it all the way. The conflict I'd felt in him had been his attempts to warn us. He'd almost destroyed himself trying to save us, and Set had thrown him aside like a broken toy. Give me control, Horus urged. We will avenge him. I've got this, I said. No, Horus said. You must let me. You're not ready. Set laughed as if he could sense our struggle. Oh, poor Horus. Your host needs training wheels. You seriously expect to challenge me with that? For the first time, Horus and I had the same feeling at exactly the same moment. Rage. Without thinking, we raised our hand, extending our energy towards Set. A glowing fist slammed into him, and the red god flew backward with such force he cracked a column which tumbled down on top of him. For a heartbeat, the only sound was a trickle of dust and debris. Then, out of the rubble came a deep howl of laughter. Set rose from the ruins, tossing aside a huge chunk of stone. Nice, he roared. Completely ineffective, but nice. It will be a pleasure chopping you to bits, Horus, as I did your father before you. I will entomb you all in this chamber to increase my storm, all 4 of my precious siblings, and the storm will be large enough to envelop the world. I blinked momentarily, losing my focus. 4? Oh, yes. Set's eyes darted to Zia, who had quietly retreated to one side of the room. I haven't forgotten you, my dear. Zia glanced at me in desperation. Carter, don't worry about me. He's trying to distract you. Lovely goddess, Set purred. The form does not suit you, but your choices are limited, weren't they? Set moved toward her, his staff beginning to glow. No, I shouted. I advanced, but Set was just as good at magical shoving as I was. He pointed at me, and I slammed against the wall, pinned as if an entire football team were holding me down. Carter, Sadie cried. She's Nephthys. She can take care of herself. No, all of my instincts told me Zia couldn't be Nephthys. At first I thought so, but the more I considered, the more it seemed wrong. I felt no divine magic coming from her, and something told me that I would have if she really was hosting a goddess. Set would crush her unless I helped, but if Set was trying to distract me, it was working. As he stalked toward Zia, I struggled against his magic, but I couldn't free myself. The more I tried to combine my power with Horus's the way I'd done before, the more my fear and panic got in the way. You must yield to me, Horus insisted, and the two of us wrestled for control of my mind, which gave me a splitting headache. Set took another step towards Zia. Ah, Nephthys, he crooned. At the beginning of time, you were my treacherous sister. In another incarnation, in another age, you were my treacherous wife. Now I think you'll make a nice appetizer. True, you're the weakest of all, but you're still one of the 5, and there is power in collecting the complete set. He paused, then grinned. The complete set? That's funny. Now let's consume your energy and entomb your soul, shall we? Zia thrust out her wand. A red sphere of defensive energy glowed around her, but even I could tell she was weak. Set shot a blast of sand from his staff, and the sphere collapsed. Zia stumbled backwards, the sand ripping at her hair and clothes. I struggled to move, but Zia yelled, Carter, I'm not important. Stay focused. Don't resist. She raised her staff and shouted, The House of Life! She launched a bolt of fire at Set, an attack that must have cost all of her remaining energy. Set batted the flames aside, straight at Sadie, who had to raise her wand quickly to protect herself and Amos from getting fried. Set tugged at the air as if pulling an invisible rope, and Zia flew toward him like a rag doll, straight into his hand. Don't resist? How could Zia say that? I resisted like crazy, but it didn't do me any good. All I could do was stare helplessly as Set lowered his face to Zia's and examined her. At first, Set seemed triumphant, gleeful, but his expression quickly turned to confusion. He scowled, his eyes flaring. What trick is this? He growled. Where have you hidden her? You will not possess her, Zia managed, her breath choked off by his grip. Where is she? He threw Zia aside. She slammed against the wall and would have slid into the moat, but Sadie yelled, Wind, and a gust of air lifted Zia's body just enough for her to tumble onto the floor. Sadie ran over and dragged her away from the glowing trench. Set roared, Is this your trickery, Isis? He set another blast of sandstorm against them, but Sadie held her wand up. The storm met a shield of force that deflected the wind around it. The sand pitted the walls behind Sadie, making a halo-shaped scar in the rock. I didn't understand why Set was so angry, but I couldn't allow him to hurt Sadie. Seeing her alone, protecting Zia from the wrath of a god, something inside me clicked like an engine shifting into high gear. My thinking suddenly became faster and clearer. The anger and fear didn't go away, but I realized they weren't important. They weren't going to help me save my sister. Don't resist, Zia had told me. She didn't mean resisting Set, she meant Horus. The falcon god and I had been wrestling with each other for days, and he tried to take control of my body. But neither of us could be in control. That was the answer. We had to act in unison, trust each other completely, or we were both dead. Yes, Horus thought, and he stopped pushing. I stopped resisting, letting our thoughts flow together. I understood his power, his memories, and his fears. I saw every host he had ever been over 1,000 lifetimes. And he saw my mind, everything, even the stuff I wasn't proud of. It's hard to describe the feeling, and I knew from Horus's memory that this kind of union was very rare. Like the one time where a coin doesn't land heads or tails, but stands on its edge, perfectly balanced. He did not control me. I did not use him for power. We acted as one. Our voices spoke in harmony. Now! And the magic bonds that held us shattered. My combat avatar formed around me, lifting me off the floor and encasing me with golden energy. I stepped forward and raised my sword. The falcon warrior mimicked the movement, perfectly attuned to my wishes. Set turned and regarded me with cold eyes. So, Horus, he said, you managed to find the pedals of your little bike, eh? That does not mean you can ride. I am Carter Kane, I said. Blood of the pharaohs, eye of Horus, and now, Set, brother, uncle, traitor, I am going to crush you like a gnat.